It seems so long ago that I was an amateur photographer and filmmaker before I became an auteur of this craft. When my films were often underexposed or overexposed, I very rarely had the right... Yesterday's? Yeah.
Tell me why'd you have to go and drive me so crazy?
I don't know what I'm doing. I think that's been pretty obvious if you watched any of these videos. I make a different mistake every single day. I shoot B-roll and it's overexposed. I shoot it in 60 frames a second so I can slow it down, but then I forget to change this shot to 24, so then the whole thing just feels a bit off. I'm messing with 2:1 ratios and what that looks like on YouTube, and every day I'm messing up the audio as evident by many of the videos that you've already seen and the video that I put up yesterday. But one of the things that I want to understand better is how to create those beautiful, dreamy bokeh effects when you're shooting great video. It's something that for the folks that do it professionally, I just envy. Anyone can pull out a smartphone and shoot 4K video nowadays, and it looks really good. And if that's what you're interested in, is just shooting something that's sharp and bright, then you should just do that. You can grab apps that'll let you shoot in a log profile, and they look wonderful. But when you use a professional camera, something different happens. You get this beautiful blur of the background behind you, and your subject separates, and it gives this image quality that's very cinematic. And so in watching friends do that for years, I just kind of didn't understand what was so special about those cameras that it did that. Because my smartphone has a pretty low aperture, so why can't it create that same effect? And the answer lives in the exposure triangle, and it's about kind of how you choose to shoot that image. So in the simplest form, if you have a basic understanding of photography, you have to create a balance between ISO, the sensitivity to light, aperture, how much light your lens lets in, and the shutter speed, how quickly that shutter opens and closes to let light in. But video is this whole other animal because shutter speed needs to coincide with the frame rate of your video, or you'll get this really choppy, awful, stuttery video, which you've seen before if you look at the water video that I did on day 3 or 4. So I'm shooting this in 24 frames a second. It's the most cinematic way to shoot video, and for my eye, it looks the best when you're putting that out to the world. Now the challenge with that is that I need to then have my shutter speed at 1/50th. If you multiply your frame rate by 2, you get kind of a generic way to look at your shutter speed. The challenge is, if I lift that aperture up to f2.8 to be able to create this separation between me and my background, all of a sudden the image gets really overexposed. So then you get a few different options. Well, you can pull the ISO down, but I'm already shooting at ISO 100, and this is just in daylight. I don't have a soft light on me. This is just daylight view. So that's where an ND filter comes in. I am a giant fan of Peter Mckinnon, and about a year ago he did a review of a brand called Polar Pro and their ND filters. This is a Polar Pro quartz-line ND filter. This particular filter is for my 50mm lens. It wouldn't fit on this one. I mean, I could hold it up for you, but it doesn't really do anything. And this particular ND filter is interesting because it's a circular polarizer as well, and that gives you a couple really great things. If you think about like polarizing glasses, you can use this and you can turn this filter to create a polarization effect. So if you were trying to shoot out of a window or a car, or if you were trying to take a great long exposure, you can turn that sun down just a little bit and be able to catch that. So what is an ND filter? An ND filter, or neutral density filter, takes enough light out of the image without altering the color of the image to allow you to shoot at a wider aperture. You can open up that aperture on your lens and be able to create more of that bokeh effect, more of that separation of your subject and background without having to raise your shutter speed or without having to adjust your ISO. And this is a really big deal when you're out shooting video. I didn't understand this at all a few short months ago, and I'm still not very good at understanding it, but I definitely have an idea of it. So an ND filter is an important thing to have for your lenses. If you're into video, you gotta go out and buy one. And you can buy one on Amazon for about 15 bucks. They're not terribly expensive, and what's really cool is you wanna buy one for the biggest size of filter thread that you have of a lens. And then you use step up and step down rings to be able to change that to fit smaller lenses. Now, this particular lens I'm shooting on has an 82mm filter thread. And so I knew if I'm going to shoot on this one, which is Canon 16-35 f2.8 lens, and then I want a 24-70 and I want a 70-200, the holy trinity of lenses, they're all 82mm thread, so I had to get an 82mm thread. It just so happened to be wonderful that my favorite photographer, Peter Mckinnon, released a collaborative effort with Polar Pro. So this is the Polar Pro Peter Mckinnon 82mm variable ND. When you open this bad boy up, you see that very beautiful picture of Moraine Lake, which is all kinds of wonderful. And then inside of the box, you get two things. And this is so cool because they put a lot of energy, you can tell, into making this really pretty. Now, Polar Pro, if you've bought any of their filters, you know they include a nice soft case for your filter and these really high-end hard cases. They're just made really well. You can see they're there to protect your filter, and the quartz line is very resistant. You can drop it, you could scratch it with a knife, you're not gonna hurt it, but this case just makes you feel good that when it's in your bag that it's safe. These have nothing on this new one designed by the team over at Polar Pro. So this 2 to 5 stop variable ND filter by Pete Mckinnon comes in this gorgeous metal case, and you can hear it when it closes. It is snappy. Like when you close this down, you get this, man, loud sound. And inside you'll find two things in the box. First, you'll find the beautiful quartz line ND filter. This variable ND filter comes in two different options. I picked the 2 to 5 stop. And so what that means is if I am shooting something outside, I can stop down the light from between 2 to 5 stops of light. So even if it were bright daylight and I would normally have to shoot f8 or f11 range, I can actually stop down that light and be able to shoot at f2.8, which is really, really incredible. Now there is a bigger one than this, where if the light were super harsh and you needed to shoot at f16 or f22, you could stop that all the way down. That's a rare occasion for me. I'm not often in lighting that looks like that, so I didn't think it made sense for me to get that one. But this one is really perfect for me. And what's really cool is on the side, you'll notice that it has the Polar Pro logo, and then it has the different stops, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but it stops. This is really important because many variable ND filters will let you keep rotating, and what it's doing is turning the top glass and the bottom glass into each other, and eventually you'll get these little crosses in your image that look awful, and you'll no longer have a really high quality image. You have to find the sweet spot. This one, it's really easy to find where you should be shooting. So if you wanted to stop this one down just one stop, you can start right away, or 2 stops or 3 stops, and be perfect every single time because you know what that exposure is. Now, the other thing that comes in the box that's super cool is called the Defender, and this is the slimline version of it. Polar Pro makes a lens cap that's really easy. So when you start as an amateur photographer or videographer, lens caps are great. You put them on, you take them off, they don't seem like much of a burden. When you get out and do it every single day, or you do it for long periods, lens caps are the worst. They're everywhere, you lose them, they don't fit, and they fit terribly with filters on. So many of them cannot clip into the inside of the filter because it doesn't have enough room. So the idea of the Defender is two things. It's this little tiny rubber lens cap that you can throw over the lens, and it's slim. It's very, very portable. So as I put it on the ND filter, you'll notice it just fits there beautifully and attaches really simply to that lens. So it's a really easy way to protect your camera. It's also tiny, so you can slip it in your pocket, and it doesn't bother you when you're out shooting. It's an easy way to put a lens cap on your camera. So I love that Polar Pro included this. It's something that I would have wanted to buy separately anyway. So I think it's really amazing that they threw it in with this one. And it's just got this beautiful design on the outside that's so special. So this Polar Pro ND filter is a really big deal. And if you're new to video, I don't suggest that you go out and buy Polar Pro stuff right away, but you definitely should buy an ND filter. It's a really cool thing to have, and it's really important in your video arsenal. It's one of the tools you kind of must have to get into this if you're gonna shoot outdoors or not shooting great lighting. The other thing that's really cool about having an ND filter is how it helps photography. So photography with an ND filter, you would never need to stop down your camera when you're out in bright sunlight. You could just adjust your shutter speed to make that work. But if you were trying to shoot a long exposure shot, it's really hard to catch all that beautiful flowy water and to not overexpose the image terribly. But an ND filter, and especially a variable ND filter, will allow you to go out and shoot a long exposure shot, and you'll get beautiful kind of creamy tones to the water that look like the water's smoothed out. And so if you're at a waterfall in Hawaii, if you're at a lake up north, wherever you are, you can take beautiful imagery because of that ND filter. So this is the Polar Pro. This is the variable 2 to 5 stop ND filter. It's the Mckinnon Edition. It comes in this gorgeous box with this wonderful case, and it's really, really something special. So if you're in the market for an ND filter, I definitely suggest you try this bad boy out and see what you think. Hey, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm gonna put this on the camera, and what you're gonna notice is it is not bright enough where we are. Ooh.